Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gunner here. Welcome back to the channel. Now, today I want to talk a little bit about some topography things and landscapes in the areas that you're hunting and how that affects deer movement, how you can pinch deer down, and how that might funnel deer, and how you can lock in on different predictable movements and anticipate where deer are going to travel according to that topography and those different landscapes. Now, me being from southwest Wisconsin, I'm dealing with a lot of big rolling hills, a lot of steep, sharp bluffs, and over the years I've learned a few things when it comes to how those deer react to different topography changes and different landscapes, and how that narrows them down or makes them spread out a little bit more when it comes to that. So I kind of want to walk you through what I've got going on here. Now, I'm standing at about 1/3 of an acre of a food plot here, and I'll show you guys this, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I planted this on August 3rd, straight into some crimson clover, tillage radish, forage peas, and then I mowed that all down, and I planted my fall blend right into that, and this is just absolutely gorgeous. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about this setup in particular, how I've seen it play out, and why we've done what we've done here. Because at the end of the day, I'm not big on making just random habitat improvements, because there's a lot of guys where they think like, oh, I want a food plot here, this is going to be really good for me. But if the deer aren't even over there, or they're not spending a lot of time there, a bedding area is not really relevant to that area, or if it's completely out of the way of the ag field that they're eventually trying to transition to, it's not going to work out real well. Or if you're trying to create a hinge cut in an area that the deer don't even bed in right now, it's not going to get utilized. So I like making improvements to certain things that are already being utilized. I like making improvements to an already existing bedding area that the deer already feel comfortable with. They already have maybe good topography advantage. They have good wind direction, and it's a prevalent wind that they're using that bedding area in. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in and try to make that better. If it plays in for me, if it makes sense for the way I'm hunting that property or that area, then I'm going to go ahead and enhance it. So I like making improvements to things that are already occurring. So when it comes to topography, in this location, what we've got here is we've got a very steep side hill, and we've got a couple benches in there, really good areas to break deer up and create that side cover with the topography roll. But we've got a couple of ditches that are pretty deep, and they're running all the way down to the bottom. And over the years, I've come to find out, like, why are the deer on this hillside, why are they kind of congregating in those low areas? So then I got turned on to the concept of thermal winds and started diving into those. And if you don't know about thermal winds, think about thermals as water sitting on the landscape. Anytime you turn that landscape, that water's going to run. So if you think about thermals sitting on that flat landscape, when you tip this side hill, like we've got here, this is the bedding area, those thermals are going to pull down. But then when you add gullies in here, deeper ditches, those thermals are going to pull down, but they're also going to pull into those deeper areas. So the reasoning behind those deer congregating in those low spots is because they have the most amount of thermal wind pulling down into them. So they're getting as much thermal wind and scent from up here on this hill as possible to confirm that it is safe to come up and feed up on these ridges. So think about it that way. That's how I've understood it on this specific location. It's different, it changes on a lot of different areas, and even smoke bombs. If you go in there with a smoke bomb and test some things out on temp drops, like the steeper the temp drop, the more prevalent those thermal winds are going to be. They're going to pull down harder because it's in accordance with that temperature dropping in the evening hours, and vice versa in the morning. As that hillside and as those temps start to rise, those thermals are pulling up as well. But in those ditches and in those valleys and those low spots on this hillside, in the evening, they're going to cool down quicker because they're shaded. When you have that sun setting and it's shading those lowest areas on that hillside first, they're cooling quicker, so they're pulling a lot more scent down. So think about it that way. Think about things like that, and it'll help you out immensely. And then you can go ahead and start looking at it on the specific areas you're hunting, and it'll start to make a little bit more sense. That's what's helped me, and I hope that'll help you too. But now with this whole scenario, this whole setup, this hillside was logged roughly 10 years ago. And we had some red maple pulled out of here and some oaks, just sparingly. As you can imagine, with it being this steep bluff, those loggers didn't take everything because you can't get at everything. It's just too rugged of terrain, and doing it in the winter with a skidder, it's risky. So there was a lot of trees left, but there were some pockets that they opened up, and that did a lot for getting regeneration, native regeneration, a lot of blackberry briars, gooseberry, a lot of things like that started to come up. So it made this bedding area these deer were already spending time on, made it better. But then what we did is there was a lot of aspen, over-mature aspen along this hillside. We came in here and we flush cut a lot of it. And we got insane regeneration, as you can imagine, because it root suckers. Now, aspen is really cool because it's a highly preferred browse, but at the same time, it regenerates really quick and really dense. So, as you can imagine, that's what we got in here. We've got a lot of regenerating aspen, and it's good thick pockets of side cover as well as daytime browse. And so we've got the perfect scenario for a bedding area here. We got the perfect scenario when it comes to topography here, but how do you hunt it? What I figured out over the years is if you can get high on those points in the evening and you have a strong enough wind, you can avoid a lot of those thermal wind concerns. But once that wind speed starts to drop a little bit, you're at risk for allowing those thermals to get strong enough to pull your scent down in those bottoms, and that's not what we want because those deer are transitioning up this hill. You know, here in bluff country, you can anticipate those bucks either being on the top third or the bottom third of that hill. Now, it all depends on where that food source is according to how those bucks are going to be positioned. If I have, for example, an ag field on top here, and I've got a long ridge where there's no ag, there's a lot of room for does in here. There's a lot of room for does and fawns, and then you can expect those bucks to be just over that knob on the top third. But if I've got a food source that comes right to the edge of that bluff, and then it drops off and it's just straight side hill, those does and fawns are going to take up the top half of that side hill, more than likely, because those does and fawns are taking up that first half of that cover after the food source. So understand how that food source lays in accordance to the bedding areas that you're trying to figure out where those bucks are set up at and positioned in. But at the same time, that after-season scouting can be a big help when it comes to that, finding those bigger solo beds with a couple of rubs stacked in there. Those can be a big indicator on where the bucks are positioned on the properties that you're hunting. So basically what we've got going on here is I've got a box blind on this long ridge going out. And that long ridge is the highest point on this hillside. So I'm overlooking that bottom because I understand that if I have a strong enough wind blowing in my face up here, an east wind blowing in my face, blowing it up into my safe area behind me, I can get away with it. Even if those thermals start to pull down in the evening, it's going to keep those thermals at bay and keep them pushing up that hill and into my safe areas, so I don't have to worry about those deer about 50 to 100, 150 feet below me in elevation change getting my wind, because those deer are coming up this gully because they're transitioning. They understand they have that topography cover, so they have the side cover, and at the same time we enhance that side cover with cutting down a lot of those over mature aspen in there, providing that side cover, providing that daytime browse. So we're putting a lot of different beneficial aspects of habitat into those areas that the deer are already transitioning to. So they've got everything. They've got side cover with the topography, they got side cover with the timber stand improvement that we've done, they've got daytime browse, and at the same time they've got the wind. They have that low area, they're collecting all of those thermals down in that lowest spot on this hillside, so that's where they want to be. We just happen to go and make it better. So that's the bedding area side of things. And so as those deer transition up, what we've got here is we've got a staging area food plot. Now this food plot is screened by a natural fence line that's been here that separates the ag field from this food plot. So if you can think about this, when these deer go on that evening food source movement, this is almost like a little adventure because they're getting their appetizers down on that side brush and that timber stand improvement that we've done, that daytime browse. They're getting their appetizer there. Now they're getting a little bit fuller once they get out into this food plot, and then they want to get to that ag field, that big evening food source movement. They want to get there just before dark because it's a big social hub. They're talking and communicating with all the other deer. They're displaying dominance. They're checking for does. Whatever it may be, they want to get there just before dark. So that puts them here a little bit before dark. And we're conveniently sitting on either side of this food plot according to the wind, and they feel safe coming out here because they are screened. They do have this topography roll. This is a real steep side hill of a food plot. That's partially one of the reasons I went no-till with this, is to stop the erosion. But they feel secure here because they have the natural fence line that we've improved with switch along here to fill in some bald spots. But at the same time, they have that topography, and they're low enough here where they're pulling all these thermals. As that temperature starts to drop in the evening and as that cover of darkness comes down, those thermals are pulling down this hill. So they're staging in this food plot. They're getting a bite to eat in here, socializing a bit. But as that cover of darkness comes, and as they're figuring out that, okay, everything's safe up here because I have the wind, then they're going to transition up and out of here and into those big ag fields. We saw a bunch of deer one night, and we didn't decide to kill anything in here. We allow those deer to go out to the ag fields. We let them create a little bit of distance between us. We hop up out of these stands and we take this logging road right up and out of here, and these deer have no idea that we were ever there. As long as our scent control and our scent management is on point, we're allowing these deer to enjoy their natural bedding to food source movement, and we're just enhancing an already occurring movement and making it that much more predictable and better at the same time. So that's kind of what I wanted to go over, how I've seen all of this work and pan out. I actually killed my gun buck out of that exact blind that I'm telling you about on that high peak there, because I had a strong enough east wind right in my face that last day of gun season. The temperature was dropping, but that wind direction was strong enough to keep my thermal winds up, and he came up through this bottom, came up through that gully, was able to get a good shot at him and kill him effectively. And I love seeing things like that, seeing those deer actually do what you're anticipating them to do, because that makes all the hard work in the off season, all of those habitat improvements, what you think is happening, it's just confirming that, and you know that everything that you've done to make that better had a play in why that worked out the way it did and how you can achieve success that way. So I love seeing that, and what I'm trying to do here is trying to paint the picture in your mind of what I'm seeing here and how that could possibly relate to the properties that you guys hunt, and how you can add different habitat strategies to your own properties, already occurring movements on your land, to make them that much better, that much more predictable, to get success for this fall and the falls to come.